Welcome to CropCast Conversations, a podcast that draws on experience and advice from people working in the arable industry to cover a range of interesting topics.
The crop 25 has looked very good. The quality is there, and this is very important as well, is that we can talk about planted acres, we can talk about yield, but what we shouldn't forget is the fact that the oils, so the oil bonus that these farmers, these growers are getting is very, very good. So what that just shows is that we're never going to have a perfect growing season, but we had a very, very good growing season, which then means that on top of the pretty decent prices, the pretty decent yield, we can actually also tack onto that a pretty decent bonus.
I'm Mark Bowsher-Gibbs. I'll be here every other month with a new episode. In today's episode, we're focusing on oilseed rape, and my guests today are from United Oilseeds. Hi, Andrew, and hi, Nick.
Hi there.
Are you both well?
Yes, very well, Mark. How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm very, very well, thank you. Very well. Andrew, do introduce yourself for the benefit of our listeners today.
Yes. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Milne. I have worked in the agricultural sector all of my career. I live in Kelso in the Borders, and I have been working for United Oilseeds for the best part of 15 years.
Very good. And Nick, over to you. A bit about yourself would be great.
Yep, I've also had all of my industry in the agricultural space. Started out working in Cargill, trading various grains and oilseeds, ran Cargill's. I was looking after their crush in Australia for a number of years, and then came back to Europe to set up a biofuels brokerage firm, which were around for a while, and then joined United Oilseeds a year and a half ago as their trading manager.
Great. And you're based down where?
We are down in Devizes in Wiltshire. Okay,
but you trade nationally, I presume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. It would be good to get a sort of UK-wide perspective, even though Andrew and I are based up in Scotland. It's the crop's growing nationwide, and all parts of the UK have got their own issues with oilseed rape, potentially. Perhaps Scotland, we're a bit better off up here. But anyway, we'll come on to that perhaps. So United Oilseeds, a large specialist cooperative. Andrew, do tell us a bit more about the company, its history, and the sort of area you cover.
Sure. I've got a few facts here which I hope that your listeners will find interesting. So, United Oilseeds, the cooperative was formed back in the 1960s by a handful of Hampshire farmers. I understand that they were looking for an alternative to growing continuous barley. And United Oilseeds, as I say, was set up. And I think I'm correct in saying that we will be celebrating our 60th birthday next year. As I say, there was a few farmers who started the cooperative back then. I'm pleased to say that the company has grown exponentially over the last 60 years or so. As Nick has just mentioned, he's based in Devizes, which is where our head office is based. We're very proud of the fact that we are farmer-owned and also farmer-led. We have a small board of directors comprising of 5 active farmers, or included 5 active farmers on the board. Currently, we have approximately 4,500 trading members from Kent in the southeast to Cornwall in the southwest, all the way up to Caithness. So we cover the whole of the country. If I can just talk about the business in general, we employ, I think I'm correct in saying, somewhere between 25 and 30 people, including within that total, there are 8 area managers which cover the length and breadth of the country. As I say, I live in Kelso. I look after the business in Scotland, so anything north of the border. I think it's important to make the point that we also work with a lot of partners, agents, other merchants who support our business. It's important to mention that. We get well supported by them. Scotland's a big place, as is the UK, and as I say, we work with a lot of third parties. If I may, just talk about Scotland as a whole. We, as I say, have customers from the borders right up to Caithness. We ship rapeseed out of the East Coast ports, which would include in the north, starting off at Invergordon. We ship out of Invergordon. We have used both Inverness and Buckie in the past, but haven't done so for a number of years. So we're shipping rapeseed out of Invergordon, Peterhead, Montrose, Dundee, and Berwick-upon-Tweed. And I don't wish to steal Nick's thunder. He can talk about where that rape ends up. Anything south of the Forth, so south of Edinburgh, we also take oilseed rape down to the crushing facility at Liverpool. Again, Nick, I'm sure, will elaborate on that when he speaks in due course. So I've got a good number of other things to talk about, but how does that sound as a start?
That's very interesting. I mean, the cooperative aspect of it's great. I mean, there's profit share in there. I presume pool marketing, which we can come on to and discuss how you get the sort of best price for your members. And I gather your sort of contracts are produce of area rather than specific tonnages, which always helps.
It does help. That's something which not every merchant offers. We offer a produce of hectarage whereby a grower is not defaulted if he or she produces more or less than the contracted tonnage. So it's important to make that point.
So what sort of, just to give ideas myself a better idea, what sort of tonnage are you dealing with annually for oilseed rape, to either of you?
Yeah, so basically, we would say that we're about a third of the UK crop, just to give a kind of ballpark figure. So in a year like the year that we're in now, last year or the coming year, that can range from 250 to 300,000 tons, a little bit more or less on either side, but about a third, and we're I'd say we're extremely strong everywhere throughout the UK, but we're also, I would say, we are extremely strong in Scotland because of what we're able to offer. And I'll go through that a little bit further on in the program and just go through all those the options and what we do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to know what happens to that rate once it gets onto boats at the ports. I mean, coming back to you, Andrew, other break crops you're involved with, it's not just oilseed rape, is it? Can you tell us a bit about what else you do on the sort of seed break crop line?
Yes, we do. Obviously, the break crops are limited north of the border, as you can appreciate. We handle oats, which go into a couple of oat millers up here. But I'm not going to lie, the majority of our business is based on oilseed rape. And if I can just make this point, which I meant to make before, obviously, as you will be aware, oilseed rape is a crop where many growers like to move off their farm at harvest time. We have a considerable network of commercial stores which we use from the Black Isle in the north to, we have a couple of commercial stores in Aberdeenshire. We store oilseed rape in Montrose, also in Dundee, and we have a big commitment into coastal grains just south of the border, just outside Belford in Northumberland. So we're very flexible. If a farmer wishes to hold his crop, then that's obviously he or she's entitled to do that. But we do have the flexibility to move oilseed rape once it's been cut and dried at harvest time off farms into third-party stores. And we do feel that our members use these facilities a great deal.
Yeah. In terms of varieties, how have you seen the sort of relationship between conventional and hybrids? I would imagine hybrids are coming more to the fore or have been for a while.
You ask a very good question, Mark. United Oilseeds, it's a big string to our bow. We supply a lot of seed to our members. We have a couple of seed stores that we service our clients out of, one in Aberdeenshire and one in Angus. And the conventional seed sales orders, rather, I could probably count on the fingers of one hand. 99% of the seed that we supply will be hybrids. And your listeners will know that club root is becoming more and more of an issue, not only in Scotland, but in the UK as a whole. But there's a lot of history of turnips being grown and other brassicas, and we supply a lot of club root, resistant varieties all over the country. So that might include, varieties such as Chrome or Crusoe or Scorpion, and there are others. But the majority of the seed that we sell is hybrids in a non-club root environment. We sell a lot of the varieties, based on the recommended list. So that might be an Aurelia, an Adapt, and an Avenger. It's a movable feast. These hybrid varieties, they come and go fairly quickly, but there's no question that they all tend to perform well.
Yeah. So I suppose, longer ago when conventionals were around, you would home save your seed, but you can't do that with hybrids, can you?
You can't save hybrid seed.
No. And do you get involved in seed contracts?
It's not something we do in Scotland. We do have our own seed crops in the south. Down in, I believe, just in Hampshire, we do have some seed growers, but we don't have any seed grown in Scotland that we process ourselves.
So Harvest 25, quite a good year, wasn't it?
Harvest 25 was unique, I would say. It's probably one of the earliest harvests in living memory. Obviously started early. Oilseed rape yields were, by and large, excellent. We saw a lot of record-breaking yields, the length and breadth of Scotland. Not only was the harvest early, it was dry and allowed oilseed rape to be drilled by growers who had not grown the crop for a while. Although the Scottish planting figures have yet to be released, I do know that we are expecting a bigger UK crop, and Nick will obviously speak about this later. Regionally, we haven't seen any data, but there's no doubt that the plantings in Scotland are up.
I have got a figure, sorry to interject, but AHDB Early Bird Survey came out with a UK-wide increase of 30%.
Yep, we would tend to agree with that. This is what our seed sales would suggest.
Interesting.
They're coming out with a actually, if it's okay, I'll actually go back to the 25 crop quickly, just to kind of carry on from what Andrew had been saying. Is that we've had a fantastic 25 crop. I mean, down in England in the south, we actually had some of the first fields were cut in June, so very end of June. But this is not something we've seen before. So that came off very early, and the indications very early on, as we could see by what was being delivered to us, was that the yields were absolutely fantastic. So if you look at just to give an idea, in England, whereas a 5-year average might have been 3.1 tons per hectare, we were seeing consistently the average coming out at 3.9, which is a very big jump on what we'd seen the previous year. So even though we'd had lower planted area for the 25 crop versus 24, we're actually in production figures we're going to be doing better in 25 than we were in 24, just because of the yield, the I mean, I'd like to say uptick, but it was a little bit more than an uptick. It was an extremely large increase in yield because very favorable growing conditions. And then this, as we went further north in the country, kept on, being proven to be true. And then we hit Scotland and we were like, oh my gosh, so we thought 3.9 was good. We start looking at, we've got guys coming in with sixes and 6.5s. We're like, right, okay, that can't carry on. And it's you're not, the guys who came in with 2 probably didn't tell us too much, but we now, the numbers we're now looking at in Scotland, we're saying 4.9. Those are, I'm going to use the word punchy. Those are big numbers, and we as a business, myself personally, I've been, really, I'm very positive oilseed rape. I know we hit a low in the last few years. We've gone from these. Very big, 2 point. I think that we peaked at 2.7 million tons as Scotland and England combined. These are big numbers, and we're well down on that now. But we are starting to see this, the numbers go up, and so this 25 crop has been absolutely fantastic. So you combine decent prices. I appreciate everyone always wants a bit more, so that's why I use the word decent prices. But what I would say is that they are prices where, once again, we don't know everyone's costs on farm to produce this oilseed rape. But what I would say is that the majority of people were very happy with these prices that we're seeing now and a harvest. And then when you times that by the yield, you start getting people and growers, farmers who are saying, well, actually, I'm starting to enjoy maybe this a bit more than I have over the last few years, because we've been seeing this drain of people going away from oilseed rape, as there were just so many challenges, and the cabbage stem flea beetle being a big one, which I know that hasn't really been seen in Scotland, but we saw that further south. And so what we're getting now is a picture which I would say, it's farming, it's agronomy, it's agriculture. We can never say that everything's rosy and we're good to go now and we never have to worry about this again. But what I am saying is that we are in the up part of the cycle. Everything is looking pretty good right now. So we've had this really great year. Scotland was absolutely magnificent. I think we probably caught a few guys short up north because they had to probably come back from holiday, because they probably thought the crop was going to come off a bit later. But I would say that's probably a good problem to have. So the crop 25 has looked very good. The quality is there, and this is very important as well, is that we can talk about planted acres, we can talk about yield, but what we shouldn't forget is the fact that the oil bonus that these growers are getting is very, very good. So what that just shows is that we're never going to have a perfect growing season, but we had a very, very good growing season, which then means that on top of the pretty decent prices, the pretty decent yield, we can actually also tack onto that a pretty decent bonus. When you start looking at that as a whole, people often talk to me about rapeseed being a minor commodity, a break crop. And it's a personal challenge here to change that narrative and to change that thought process, because when I'm seeing those numbers and people go, first wheat is still first on farm, the best paying on farm, I'm like, well, I would seriously challenge that, and I would put a bit of my own money to say that the rapeseed was maybe first right now. And so this is not a minor commodity. I know it was initially bought in as a break crop, but it is not a minor commodity anymore, because it pays. So there we go. So that's, that was 2025. We go into 2026, whereby on the back of a good growing season, we're seeing people wanting to plant more acres or hectares. We're seeing more farmers that had maybe gone away for 4, 5, 6, 7 years and are saying, well, actually now, I think I can put this back into my rotation. And that's a very important one. So then this is where we kind of come back here, Mark, as to, where we were discussing just before the 30% increase. This is the reason why we're seeing this 30% increase, which, based on, even if we just base this on 5-year averages, we should be getting just shy of 1 million tons, which is, we're building this. Everyone, when I mean we, I mean everyone in this industry is just building this rapeseed oil market back up. And then for 2026, what we're seeing is that the establishment of the crop from Scotland in the north and all the way down, the establishment looks very, very good. And the proof is kind of like in the pudding in this one, is the fact that farmers, growers are selling forward. They're selling new crop to, not just us as United Oilseeds, the farming cooperative, but the market. The farmers are selling because they're starting to feel comfortable that they can sell forward some of their crop at prices that they, are saying, well, that looks pretty decent. I mean, if we look at a Scottish price right now for a new crop, we're going to start getting, we're going to be in those 385s, 390s, those type of prices on farm, which people start getting quite, they're quite happy about. I mean, what I would say is some people are actually saying, is the crop going a little bit too fast now? I think everyone would prefer to be in this scenario than, nothing's come out of the ground and we're all sitting there looking over into a dust bowl. But it's what I would say is that there's a lot of positivity around oilseed rape right now, and that is very good news for everyone. Really, it's not really a case of just because of us, as United Oilseeds what we do, but it's always this thing of giving growers, giving farmers as many options as possible and as many options in that rotation, but to make sure that whatever is being planted is actually making some money for them, because obviously agriculture, and it always has been, but will always be. It's tough, and it's not for me to say this. People live this every day. It's a very, very tricky to be in. So if we can find more and more products that are paying and that can kind of keep the lights on, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's I did some costings on gross margins for Scotland. I think oilseed rape pipped first wheats. And that was, I think I'm right in saying, the early bird survey Scottish data was about 4.6 tonnes a hectare average. So don't quote me on that, but it's in the ballpark we're talking about. And we haven't got a lot of choices, Andrew, have we, for break crops really up here? I mean, yes, as the veg sector comes in, but when you look at other break crops, peas and beans, and the returns, people put beans in because they know it's going to give them a first wheat, but the crop in itself doesn't really deliver, does it?
It's not something I have that many conversations about, Mark. To be fair, we do handle a few beans. Many of the beans grown, as you will know, are for home consumption. But just going back to your point about the plantings for harvest 26, what I find very interesting was the fact that the harvest was early, the yields were exceptional, gave farmers the opportunity, if they so desired, to put rape in the ground, and if their rotation allowed. And the planting figures that we're talking about, would reflect that there's more rape to come for harvest 26, which is encouraging.
I mean, to complement the while looking at the other crops, so rape's up 30%. I mean, these are national figures, but spring barley is down 15, winter barley is down 2, wheat up 1, oats down 14. So not such a good year for spring barley, and I expect some of that potential spring barley ground might have gone into rape. Yeah. So no, it's all positive, and it's a valuable, great break crop, and it's great that we're getting back up to another 30,000 hectares for you to market. Well, a percentage of that anyway, Nick. So let's just go back to, we talked about the stores up here on the East Coast. Could you explain, Nick, a bit about what happens to that rape once it comes out of store, and the movement of rape around the country? Because I presume are we exporting anything?
No. So I mean, if I maybe I'll turn the question around backwards and start with so just the UK as a whole. We're talking about 2 million tons of demand in the UK, and last year crop that's just come off. We're talking maybe 850,000 ish tons. So we're still importing 1.2 million tons. Next year, if we're saying 2 million tons demand, 1 million tons, just easy calc, 1 million tons of that's growing throughout the country, we're still importing half. We're still importing 1 million. So if we look at Scotland, what happens is that there is a little bit of export of high uricic and high oleic varieties, but that's a very small amount, and it's as you know, and as we're talking Scotland here specifically, this is not really anything that's grown in great numbers. So it's a conventional rapeseed. So what would happen is that, and this is what Andrew is alluding to, is that obviously tons are grown, it's cut. And then the farmer has the choice to either store on farm or to take it to a store. So we have stores basically East Coast, and then also, I know I shouldn't say this, but I call it North Coast just when I'm looking at a map. So that's that kind of Invergordon to Peterhead. So we store across there. We store across the top. We store down the side. And basically, just because of the, I would say, the topography of Scotland, there aren't a million ways that this goes. So there is always that natural way that it's quite simply where the road goes. So it comes off farm, there's a road, this is where it's going. So what will happen is it will end up at a port at some point. Then we, as United Oilseeds, and a few other people in the market, will sell this FOB. So for those that don't know, that's a shipping term which is free on board. And that basically means when I sell it, that I am going to be selling it basically hoisted, thrown over the side of a vessel, because that's as soon as it goes over that railing, it's not mine anymore. I've handed it over, and this is basically going down to ADM's plant in Erith, which is on the Thames, so basically London, and this is just a cheaper way than bringing it down by truck. It's a much more efficient way, and so pretty much every single now, not every single ton in Scotland goes to Erith, but every single ton in Scotland will pretty much stay in the United Kingdom. And then, so what happens is that depending on where you live, where your farm is, there will be this natural port or natural place to take it to. So when you're further north, this will be Invergordon for us. We used to use Inverness, but they now don't do any grain or oil seeds anymore. So we're now in Invergordon. It'll either go to then Peterhead. You obviously have a number of farmers that have kind of a deviation point, so they could do Peterhead or Montrose. That gives us, to be quite frank, a flexibility of how we load our vessels or the vessels that are coming in that we've sold onto. And this is a program that goes throughout the whole year. This is not what I would call front loading. It's not just at harvest. This is throughout the year. There are a number of vessels that would be leaving. I as a business, we also try to kind of manage that, and because we'd also want to be able to give the idea. Obviously, as a farmers cooperative, my main remit is to make sure that I can pay the farmer as much as I can. My remit is to make sure that I can help them as much on logistics as much as I can, and my remit is to make sure that they have as much flexibility as possible as to how they market their seed, because we do this, it's their seed. So we want to make sure that we could do everything for them. So the system that has been put in place and has been working, I would say, very well. I come from a shipping background, actually, and so this is something that I really hold very close to my heart, is to make sure that this shipping program is working like a Swiss watch, and it does, because we've got very competent growers, we've got very competent hauliers, and we've got very competent ports in Scotland, which means that the amount of, I'm going to use a bit of a woolly word, the amount of faffing that goes on is actually very minimal, and it is a very efficient system. So that's what happened. And then we have the growers and the farmers that are closer to the borders or in the borders, where because once again, my remit is to make sure that Andrew and myself can give and pay the most money possible to a farmer. So we are trying to find a way of moving these tons the fewest amount of miles. It's as simple as that. The fewest amount of miles you can move it, the more money we can give to a farmer and a grower. So in this case, the further south they are, then we would say, well, some people would go into coastal grain, which is Berwick, and then those would come out on slightly smaller vessels down to ADM, and then we would have the other farms that it would naturally go into Liverpool. So that would be Cargill's crush plant in Liverpool. And so therefore, this is why we're able to, Andrew, on any given day, and this is the beauty, to come back to the fact that there's 2 million tons of demand and only 1 million tons, let's just say easy numbers, of production, is that on any given day of the year, including the 24th of December, Andrew will have a price for a grower. Now, whether that grower likes the price or not is a different discussion, but there will always be a price that is a fair price based on what the international markets are doing. And so from a kind of a pricing kind of perspective, a grower, and it was alluded to a bit before, is that we do have different contracts. We can just have a basic fixed contract, which is a grower says, I've got 3 loads, I've got 87 tons. You either pick it up on farm or I'm going to deliver it to export or ex-store. That's fine. That's what we do. We have these hectare contracts, basically, which is basically everything that you grow in that plot of land, we will be buying that off of you. And that is also to make sure that a grower does not feel uncomfortable either, if the yields are very good or yields are very bad, and feel like they might, get into a bit of a pickle on that one. So we make sure that my job is to take that risk and manage that risk for them. We have some people who like just delivering into store. And at that point, they are saying, well, I'm not sure I like the price today. I think there might be a carry in the market, i.e. the price might go up over time, in which case I'm going to leave it in store. And on any given day, once again, I can choose to price it. Then they price it, and at that point, I then have the ownership of those tons if I'm the buyer there. So that gives them some flexibility. You have other farmers who are just like, I'm going to deliver straight to a boat, or I want it delivered straight to a boat, so it'll be a price on the day. They're happy with that. We've got some of the very, very big farmers who actually have some storage capacity themselves in ports and would sell directly to me FOB. So they're just saying, I'm going to actually pay to tip it over the side of the vessel, and that all the prices included, so I can do that. And then we have, and this is the very important part of what we do, is we have the pools. And this is whereby a farmer will probably be saying to themselves, well, I would like to be in a pool. So we have 3 pools. We have what we call the harvest pool, which is a pool where it's marketed up to the point of harvest. Then we have a long pool, which is basically October to about March. So that's kind of like the mid-season pool, we'll call it. And then we have what we call the carte blanche pool. And the carte blanche pool is a pool for the full year up to basically May, June the next year. So what that means is that it's often about when a farmer or a grower might want payment or movement of their product. And so my then role is to manage the risk on those different pools and get the best for the grower. And that's where it's basically that a grower will say, well, my expertise is in growing these products. Maybe someone else has a little bit more expertise in the marketing of these products. And that's where I come into play. And then this is the main function, the core of the business is running these pools to make sure that we can extract, down to the most money possible that then we can then give back to the farmers as a pool payment. So when you go through all of this, there are quite a few different options from how they can market, i.e. sell their product, and then there's also quite a few options of where the tons will go and how it's moved, basically.
Yeah. And if you, I was always wary of holding rape long term on farm just because it's a tricky crop to manage. So I suppose if you can put it into store and still play the market, you can do that through your schemes.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things is that there are growers that feel comfortable storing and that they've got really the infrastructure needed, because obviously rapeseed oil is not the easiest to store. You have to be careful. There are moisture issues. There are, like every crop, hotspot issues. We need air to be continuously going through it. It's not just as easy as chucking it in the back of the shed, closing it, and because I tell you, if you do that, it'll be walking out a few days later by itself.
It's when you walk up onto the heap and you don't start sinking in. That's when you worry.
Well, that's exactly it. So exactly. So there are all these storage options, and then I guess looking at pricing, because it's something that's important for I think it's important to be transparent about this, because pricing is always a bit the sensitive subject when we start talking money, when we're starting talking about products and money. So because we are net importers, the reality is very simple: is that external factors affect our prices. It is not a case of Nick Hobson at United Oilseeds, or Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith in ADM, or Cargill, or whoever it may be, a smaller merchant, dictating a price. The prices that we are able to show are based on an equivalency of an import price. So it's what price can tons from either Europe or Australia come into the UK, and then based on that, we then try and pay as much as possible. We are constantly there is a constant battle between this and understanding of this import parity, and we have a lot of the time where an organization like the one we work for, Andrew and myself, we will be paying more than that actual import parity, because there's the reality of what the world would like the market to be. And then there's also the domestic market, which is, well, if you're short and you need to buy, you can't just buy a vessel that's going to arrive 5 minutes later. So the market can go up. So we as a business, we love high prices. We have no interest in prices being low, because it doesn't really help anything. We don't gain anything by having low prices. No one in the industry really has an interest in having low prices. We want high prices so that the farmer grows the product, everyone can actually make a little bit of money out of it, and pay the bills, and carry on. So it's all about this import kind of parity and mechanisms. And right now, obviously, we're seeing a lot of this is being influenced by when we have like right now, as an example, just to give a very brief example, the market is going up right now, which is great for us, and we're loving it because we can pay the farmer more. The market is going up right now because Ukraine is not selling, so these tons are not hitting the European market, and also we have a very big crop in Australia, but Australians export so much wheat and barley that the export capacity, the export elevation, the amount of ability to bring the tons out of Australia is being hampered. And canola, because they grow canola, is basically taking a back seat because they need to move the wheat and the barley out. So what it means is that this canola that should be hitting European shores is going to be delayed. So what that is, the effect here is that the market is going up. So we're loving this for the moment. This is a great thing. So it's there's for the pricing of these markets, it can be a little bit complicated, and there's always the problem is there's always a reason for it to go up. There's always a reason for it to go down, and then we need to figure out which one weighs the most, which one makes the most sense.
I always think the oilseed market complex is quite complicated. It's soya, it's crude, what are your key watch points? Because obviously you've probably got to take decisions on forward selling if you think longer term it's going to fall. What worries you on the downside, for example?
Yeah, look, so you always have to initially look at the fundamentals. So the fundamentals here it sounds very basic, but it's very complicated. It's supply and demand, and this is exactly what you're saying. It's the price for a farmer in Scotland could be affected by how much palm oil is produced, and that could be a little bit a bit esoterical. It's a bit like, well, hold on a second, what does that have to do with me? Well, the thing is that everything is connected. So all the veg oils are connected. So you've got basically palm oil, which is there's the biggest veg oil out there. Then you've got basically soybeans, and then you've got canola / rapeseed. And so I have to be constantly looking at what's happening with those flows. we have to be constantly looking at the trade spats and tariffs that's going on between the US and China, Canada and China, because Canada grows 22 million, or this year is just shy of 22 million tons of canola. And a lot of that would go to China as an example, but this year it's not, because they're having this fight between the 100% import tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, and so China has said, well, we're not taking any of your canola, and then we have these tariff spats with between the US and China on the soybeans. So I'm looking also at the geopolitics. I'm looking at what's happening on the tariffs, the movement. We also very much have to look at the crude and the energy markets, because at the end of the day, all oil seeds are then they're quite used quite a lot in biofuels. So we've got places like Indonesia and Malaysia that are talking about this B40 up to B50. So that's maybe an extra 10% of biofuels in the kind of mix. You've got in the US a government. There's this small refineries exemption, which is this concept that if you're a small refinery, you don't need to use biofuels. But then some people are saying, well, actually, we want them to use biofuels because this will kind of boost US agriculture in a time when the US is losing sales of beans to China. Basically, South America is selling these tons. Then we've got things like the EUDR, which is the EU deforestation regulation that has been supposed to come into effect on the 30th of December 2024, was delayed a year, is potentially going to get delayed another year. And this would have a big impact on the origin, or potentially have a big impact on the origin of where oil seeds and the meal could come from South America into Europe. So it could cut off some supply. So that could be quite bullish. So we're looking at that. And then we're looking at currency. Quite simply is that things are priced in euros or dollars. And then, unfortunately, this kind of comes back to politics a bit, is that, as we all know, the country as a whole economically is maybe not doing as well as it could be, and the pound is getting weaker. Now, strangely enough, this is good for us, because when we take a euro and we divide it by a number that's smaller, we get more pounds. It's as simple as that. So the farmers are actually gaining from the fact that economically the UK as a whole is not doing that well, because sterling is weaker. So that actually a few weeks ago, there was a big move in the prices. We had £4, £5, £6 of increase in price just on sterling weakness, which it's not good if you want to go on holiday, but it's good if you've got some oilseed rape to sell.
Yeah. Fascinating insight. Thanks for that, Nick. A couple of things I just want to touch on before we close. One is on the analysis of rape, and obviously you mentioned oil content. How do you get a fair reading? Is it an independent analysis that you use for?
I'll take that one if I may. I think it's important to make this point. We can't expect all of our storekeepers to have their own oil analysis kit, because it's extremely expensive. So everything that we trade, everything that goes into store, everything that goes over the side of a ship gets tested independently. So it's very important to make that point, that our members, our customers, the people that trust us can sleep happy, if that's the correct expression, that they are getting paid for the correct oil analysis.
Okay. Nick, I've got a question for you. We're going to just touch on the reboot campaign, but I want to partner that with a question about spring rape. Not a lot grown up here. In the current circumstances, would you advise perhaps farmers to look at spring rape as a possible?
I'll take that one, Mark, if I may. Spring rape is a crop which is not widely grown in Scotland. We have a handful of customers. I think there's a lot of nervousness about a wet autumn, a wet September.
It's just the lateness of the cutting.
It's the lateness of the crop, which makes growers and producers nervous. So even in the current climate, we've touched on spring barley demand. I don't think that spring rape, it does have a place, but it's not a crop which is widely grown north of the border.
This coming autumn might come back and bite us. So a bit on Reboot, Nick, which is really perhaps in the light of England's declining acreage, you did, or you are doing, some sort of proactive work on promoting the crop.
Yep, absolutely. So Reboot was an initiative which was initially thought up and started by our boss, which is James Warner, who's the managing director. And I mean, just to quickly go through it, it's that we've seen this decline in area, and also very much in yield. So we are basically one of the worst performing countries in Europe with regards to yield, and it's, strangely enough, we have a very similar climate to Ireland, and they're one of the best performing in yield. Now, I understand they have fewer hectares, but something's not quite right, should we say? So basically, the Reboot why, when the difference between how many tons we were exporting back in the day and how many we are now importing, there's basically a £1 billion per year net trade deficit. And then when you multiply that by all the other parts of the chain, which is the logistics involved, the analysis, there's just all these parts of the chain, just means we're losing a lot of money. We're basically giving a lot of money away. We then have the point of food security, because everyone's talking about food security. We've seen certain governments recently, and in Russia, Ukraine, where they're potentially using food as a weapon, just away with wheat with Russia. We've got this food security, and edible oil is something where we went from like 70, 60, 40% food security now to down to only about 20. This is in most countries, this would be considered a national emergency. The UK government does not consider this a national emergency, but it is. And it's very important that this deficit is countered. And then we also have the feed sector, which is basically that we need to be able to feed animals, basically, and we need this feed. So we need the meal that gets used, and then we also have, because it's all about protein, basically, it's about feeding these animals. And then we just had, this agreement between the UK and the US, whereby it basically closed down Vivergo. Well, that's a big issue, because we now have potentially 750,000 tons, maybe slightly less than that, of DDGs. Basically, that's feed that would go into animals that we now don't have anymore. And so this is really a bit of these are big issues that need to be resolved. So the Reboot is there to try and rebalance all of this. And then how we do this is basically it's policy, it's lobbying, it's advocacy, it's talking to the government, talking to DEFRA, trying to get them to get an understanding. And they already have some understanding. I'm not saying they're not doing anything, but it's really more of an understanding of the effects of some of the decisions that are being made. There's the concept of this 10 shared strategies, because there's no silver bullet to sort out growing and getting better yields. It's just there are incremental changes that you can make. There's some parts of it agronomy. It's when you grow it, when you don't grow it, when you plant it, what you do. Some people are putting sheep on to get rid of cabbage stem flea beetles. There's all these ideas, and it's stuff like this. And then there's research. So there's the AHDB is coming out with more and more research, which is partly being funded by the government, but also by private actors like ourselves, other people in the industry, to really find out the causes why it can be tricky at times to grow this rapeseed oil. And then the idea is really just as an industry as a whole is to collaborate and to find solutions, because we need this rapeseed. We need it. There is demand, and we need it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you both. Thank you very much. A closing remark from you, Andrew? What's the sort of takeaway message you perhaps like to give the listeners from United Oilseeds' point of view?
The obvious place to start is to thank you guys for having us on.
It's pleasure. It's been really interesting.
It's always great to be invited on and talk about our own business, a business of which we're very proud of. So thank you very much for inviting Nick and I on. Basically, I think just like to repeat what I said at the start. United Oilseeds, we're farmer owned, we're farmer led. We're proud of our business. We have a very loyal following, not just in Scotland, but in the UK as a whole. We have a lot of farmers and growers and agents and merchants who have dealt with us for years, in some cases decades. So we must be doing something right. So I think I would just like to say thank you for having us. If anybody wants any further information, unitedoilseeds.co.uk, all our contact information's in there. And onwards and upwards, and here's to Harvest 26.
Indeed. Thank you both very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of CropCast Conversations. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, you may enjoy some of our other Farm Advisory Service podcasts. This podcast was presented by me, Mark Bowsher-Gibbs, produced by Heather Stewart, edited by Cameron Waugh, with executive producers Kirsten Blackwood and Kerry Hammond. Come back next time for more CropCast Conversations.
The Farm Advisory Service podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.